Hello, and no, that's stupid. Hi, this is gonna be a bit different. This is a video on Animal Farm, and it's not my usual YouTube video. This is specifically for school and for 12th grade, and Animal Farm was written by George Orwell. The book was first published in 1945 on August 17th, and the blurb is, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The animals at Manor Farm have had enough of Farmer Jones. He's drunk, reckless, and cares little for their welfare. When the boar, Old Major, shares his revolutionary plans, the animals are convinced they can thrive on their own once the despot Jones is removed. But as the pigs vie for power, they begin to bear an uncanny resemblance to the tyrants they have overthrown. George Orwell's renowned fable and satirical portrait of politics become an instant success upon its publication after the Second World War. The novel has continued to captivate readers of all ages and has secured Orwell's position as one of the great writers of the 20th century. So, during the time that this book was published, of course, it was during the Second World War. This was a time of many conflicts, especially between the USSR and Germany and the rest of Europe, basically. And people were poor, people were hungry, people had to flee their homes. England was being bombed at this time, and all the kids had to leave their parents so they could be saved. And this book specifically, in my opinion, was written as a warning about the USSR, showing the truth of what it actually is. And since we, not specifically our generation, but other generations have lived through the USSR, they know what it's like, and it's not all sunshines and rainbows. It's dark, it's sad, it's forceful, and through these animals we can see that it's completely different. The art of this time really did share what was happening during the time, during this political war. A lot of art depicted human suffering, depicted war, depicted camps, military vehicles, people being in pain. And also during this time, many novels were published, just like Animal Farm. Short stories like Evelyn Vaught's Put Out More Flags in 1942, or Henry's Green's Cod, 1943, or James Hanley's No Directions, 1943. Of course, due to the war, a lot of authors did die, like Alan Lewis, Sidney Keys, and Keith Douglas. And many authors also showed what the battlefield was like with these novels, just like Animal Farm. Animal Farm really did have a big impact, because it's a book that's so innocent at the start, like a children's book. I even thought it was a children's book the first time I read it, but no, it's not. It's much deeper than that. He took a risk, and he showed the true colors of Russia during the time. And the impact was that people could take the book and they could read it and not get arrested. Like, maybe not get arrested for reading the book because it just looks like a simple children's book. It doesn't look like something that's banned or you can't talk about. Because, well, in Russia, you couldn't really talk about anything. Russia was perfect. Russia was everything. Russia was the world. Nothing outside of Russia existed to Russia. And so that book could communicate to those people that this kind of thinking is dangerous. Let's get on to the main questions for each chapter, and this will be divided into chapter 1 to 3, chapter 4 to 6, then chapter 7 to 10, I think. So, chapter 1 to 3. The first part would be the key events. And at the start of the book, we're greeted with just a regular farm. And where animals are worked. Animals have to do their jobs, and they get fed just your average meal. They don't get fed enough to their standards. And this farm is run by Jones. Mr. Jones is not the nicest guy. He also has a wife, but the wife isn't really mentioned that much. She is mentioned, I think, once in the book, and we don't really know what happens to the wife. It's also interesting thing. I guess she runs off with him. I'm not sure. Mr. Jones was also a drunk. He was abusive to the animals. And as soon as it went to dark, animals started having their meetings and started talking all about it. After that, we are greeted with the first animal, which would be Old Major. And Old Major is our first quote-unquote dictator in this world. He is the wisest pig, and he is the leader of their group. And so, the first meeting happens after Old Major has a dream. At the meeting, we meet 3 dogs, Bluebell, Jessie, and Pitcher. There are also pigs, there are hens, but most animals aren't really given any personalities or given any names. My guess would be because there would be too many characters for you to remember. Then there are 2 cart horses, Boxer and Clover. Boxer is an older male, and then Clover is a younger, and they're also very careful not to crush other animals because they were very tiny animals. Clover was also motherly, and she had many foals. Boxer was much larger, nearly 18 hands high, whatever that means, and very strong. Then we have Muriel, the white goat, Benjamin, the donkey. Benjamin was the oldest on the farm, and he had the worst temper. Then there was also Molly was a pretty white mare. She was the one that's like foolish. She was foolish. Trusted Jones too much. And then there was also a cat who didn't really partake much in helping the animals. He disappeared a lot. And there was also Moses, who was not present at the meeting, who's a raven. And then we have Major's speech, which sounds incredibly like anything that a USSR leader would say. Now, comrades, what is the nature of this life of ours? Let us face it, our lives are miserable, laborious, and short. We are given just so much food as will keep the breath in our bodies, and those of us who are capable of it are forced to work to the last atom of our strength. And the very instant that our usefulness has come to an end, we are slaughtered with hideous cruelty. No animal in England knows the meaning of happiness or leisure after he is a year old. No. Animals in England is free. The life of an animal is misery and slavery. That is the plain truth. So, the animals have had enough. They don't want Jones. They do not want to have a human leader. They want the farm to themselves. They want to work for themselves. And so, that starts the whole uprising of the animals, and then the animals fight Jones off, and they chase him off the farm, and he runs away. The animals are the only ones on the farm, and then they have their first harvest, which is completely done by animals. They plowed the fields, they planted seeds, they grew their crops, they harvested their crops, they did everything themselves, and they had enough food for themselves. They were happy, they were content. And the next question would be to list 5 words. So, we have, first word would be scullery. The next one would be ensconced. Third word would be stout. Fourth, benevolent. And the fifth word would be cheaping. Then, in chapter 2, Old Major dies peacefully in his sleep. And here's where you start to see that the pigs are starting to be seen as smarter. They're the higher ups, they are the leaders, they're the soldiers. They're better than the people. But the animals don't see that yet. And we get two new characters, Snowball and Napoleon. Napoleon was a large, rather fierce-looking Berkshire boar. The only Berkshire on the farm, not much of a talker, but with a reputation for getting his own way. Snowball was a more vivacious pig than Napoleon, quicker in speech and more inventive. Snowball was a thinker. Napoleon was a doer. They kept on teaching Old Major's teachings, and the whole USSR thing started here, where they banned everything that was human. They banned ribbons that Molly loved. They banned sleeping on the beds in Mr. Jones's house. They wanted to keep it a museum. And the animals were worked every day. And this is also when the 7 commandments were made for the animals. First one would be, whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. Second, whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. Third one, no animal shall wear clothes. Fourth, no animal shall sleep in a bed. Fifth, no animal shall drink alcohol. Sixth, no animal shall kill any other animal. Seventh, all animals are equal. And chapter 3 is the first harvest, and this is where all the animals are happy and content. They completely do everything themselves. They plant the seeds, they harvest the crops. Day by day, they worked, and it was the same thing every single day. But that didn't really matter to the animals. But on Sundays, there was no work. Breakfast was an hour later than usual. After breakfast, there was a ceremony, which is observed every week without fail. First came the hoisting of this flag. Snowball had found in the harness room an old green tablecloth of Mr. Jones and had painted on it a hoof and a horn in white. So, here's the flag, and as you can see, you can imagine that's very similar to the USSR's flag. But it is not stated outright. Once you know the history behind the book, it starts to make sense why it was written as it was. And now, chapter 4 to 6. This chapter starts off with the animals spreading the news of Beasts of England. So they're basically sharing the revolution with other people, and this co-aligns with the world at the time. Of course, Russia occupied other countries. It wasn't just Russia. USSR was multiple countries, just like our own Latvia or Lithuania or Estonia. They set their paws or hoofs in this instant, or whatever, into other lands, and we can see that the propaganda is spreading. And then we are introduced to Mr. Pillington, an owner of another farm, but of course this is, as we know later on, this is a different country. It's like Animal Farm is the USSR. Mr. Pillington is something else. He was an easygoing gentleman farmer who spent most of the time fishing or hunting according to the season. The other farm, which was called Pinchfield, was smaller and better kept. Its owner was Mr. Frederick, a tough, screwed man perpetually involved in lawsuits and with a name for driving hard bargains. These two hated each other. But they had one thing in common. They were terrified of Animal Farm. They were terrified of this propaganda spreading to their own farms. And the rumors were spread that the animals were chaotic. They murdered each other. But there were people that didn't believe these rumors. They believed that the Animal Farm was perfect. Animal Farm was amazing. And then we get on to the next event, which is the fight between the animals of Animal Farm and the other farms out there. So between different countries, per se. So Mr. Jones came back with a gun. And he had help. But the animals were victorious. Everyone joined this fight. And in the end, they ended up killing a guy. Boxer was the one that accidentally killed him. And he states, I have no wish to take life, not even human life. So he didn't want this. It just happened. But he was pushed to believe that it was okay. It was good. It was right for the farm. It was what they had to do to survive. And then we find out that Molly was sneaking off to other farms and getting sugar from other farmers. And after that, we have the Animal Hero First Class, which was Snowball and Napoleon, the army leaders. And they were given brass medals, which were just horseshoes. And then the Animal Hero Second Class consisted of a dead sheep that died during that fight. And the fight was nicknamed the Battle of the Cowshed. And of course, no medals were given to the other animals. They didn't deserve medals, obviously. And that, of course, is sarcasm. And then Molly leaves, and she doesn't come back ever. And they never mention Molly again. And then tension starts between Snowball and Napoleon, since their ideas never matched. One says this, the other one wants that, and so on and so forth. And in meetings, Snowball is the smart one, so Snowball always states his ideas, but then the sheep are followers for Napoleon, and they start blurting out 4 legs good, 2 legs bad during the meeting, and, well, he can never get his points across, so there is a lot of tension. And then Snowball comes up with the windmill plans, and windmills would make the farm more efficient, but he does state that it is hard work, it will be hard work. And then we get on to the moment where Napoleon pees on the pan, so we can see he does not like it. He's never liked them from the start. And it's even stated, only Napoleon held aloof. He had declared himself against the windmill from the start. And as we get later on, we know that's very manipulative of him. Benjamin was the only animal who did not side with either factions. Animals were divided. Benjamin didn't really have a side. And then the windmill... But finally, during a meeting, Snowball was chased out by 9 large dogs that were raised by Napoleon secretly. So they were puppies that were taken from the dogs from the start of the book. And they chase him off. And then Napoleon says, oh yeah, no, actually, yeah, I was always for the windmill. I just didn't say it. It was all part of my plan. So yes, there's more of the manipulation, which is very evident now. And the animals were terrified. But they could do nothing. They were forced, they were stated, and they believed Napoleon. They believed that Snowball was a bad guy. Snowball was the bad one. There were rumors of Snowball all the time. He was a traitor. It was all part of Napoleon's plan to chase out Snowball. And of course, that's obviously fake. It's not. It's just manipulation to get the animals on Napoleon's side. And then we get onto a new character, which is Squealer. And Squealer is Napoleon's right-hand man. He believes everything Napoleon says. So, obviously, he's very, very keen on following Napoleon's plans. And so, how does Napoleon get the animals on his side? Well, he states, you do not want Jones back, right? And then there are new sayings. Napoleon is always right. I will work harder. So, even more manipulation. Then we have another pig, Minimus, who had a remarkable gift for composing songs and poems. And he sat with the 9 young dogs. So all the pigs sat together. And so, the windmill, they started building the windmill again. And the animals just went along with it. They were skeptical, but Napoleon kept them at bay and kept feeding them propaganda so they would still behave. And now there's a new thing where animals have to work on Sundays. So now, previously, they didn't have to work, but now they have to work. And they have to work much harder. But it said that it's not voluntary, but if you didn't go, then you would be fed less. So it was forced. It was basically forced. Then they had shortages on supplies, so they didn't have everything that needed, and they didn't know how to make most of the stuff like oil, nails, string, dog biscuits, and iron for the horses' shoes. They had no knowledge of that. And then Napoleon started being friends with other farms to trade. No. It is just to get materials. So, of course, the animals believed him, the animals followed him. And then, of course, everything was blamed on Snowball from then on and forwards and previously. And then we have Mr. Whymper, who was the farm as had been arranged every Monday. He was a sly-looking little man with side whiskers, a solicitor in a very small way of business, but sharp enough to have realized early that everyone else that Animal Farm would need a broker. So he was a broker for the Animal Farm, and the animals avoided him at all costs. They were proud. They were proud that an animal like Napoleon, who stood on 4 legs, could communicate and work with a human that stood on 2 legs. So that kept them at bay for a long time. And then we get into all the commandments getting changed. And one of them is now completely changed to, no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. So the pigs were caught sleeping in human beds, but now suddenly the rules are different. No, they are not. They can sleep on beds, just not with sheets. So there's more propaganda in there. And now pigs could get up an hour later. So even more hierarchy there. And then they found the windmill in ruins. Snowball was blamed, of course. We all know it was Napoleon. I've already read this book completely before reading it again, so yes, it's most definitely Napoleon's fault. Since Snowball was completely chased off, there's no reason for him to come back, and it's presumed that he's completely dead, because, well, he doesn't show up again. And the 5 words learned in these chapters would be ignominies. So the sentence is, and so within 5 minutes of their invasion, they were in ignominious retreat by the same way as they had come. Ratified? Though their decision had to be ratified by a majority vote. The 3rd word would be contemptible. So, how even animals could bring themselves to sing such contemptible rubbish. And next one would be a flogging. Any animal caught singing, it was given a flogging on the spot. And din of the smithies. It got into the din of the smithies and the tune of the church bells. Now, chapter 7 to 10. Chapter 7 starts off with rebuilding the windmill. The animals are still putting out rumors, and now there are rumors outside of the Animal Farm. They don't have much food, and they can't really get much crop. Of course, this is true, but they don't want the other people to know that, because USSR and everything, they have a good image, amazing image, and they don't want that changed. And now the hens need to give up the eggs. Before, at the start of the book, the whole rebellion, the first rebellion was for animals having the right, and the hens could keep their eggs. But here, the eggs need to be sold, and the hens, their food was taken away when they tried to rebel. So they couldn't rebel. And now Napoleon is even higher in status as well. And there's even more rumors of Snowball being behind everything bad going on in the farm. They blamed Snowball for everything. And Snowball is Jones's secret agent. That's also a new rumor. And there's also Squealer as well helps with the propaganda, and the animals believed him. Then there's rumor of traitors, and some pigs are completely terrified. But they confess. Of course, we, as readers, know they didn't do these things, but they were forced to tell. And they were slaughtered, as well as some chickens and a goose. And as we remember, there was a commandment not to kill other animals, but of course, they don't listen to their own commandments anymore. And animals, this is not what they wanted from the start of the revolution. They wanted freedom. They didn't want to be enslaved. But they were enslaved. And then Beast of England was forbidden because the revolution was over. Now they were just living and they didn't need it anymore. And now it was Animal Farm, Animal Farm. Never thaw me shalt thou come to harm. And yeah, the commandment, no animal shall kill any other animal, gets changed to no animal shall kill any other animal without cause. And thing is, not all animals could read, so Muriel the goat just read out the commandments and they believed it. It never changed. They were suspicious that some letters were painted over, but they couldn't notice. They didn't know. They didn't have the smarts to realize. Just like the people in the USSR, they didn't know. They couldn't know. They didn't have the facts. They didn't have anything. They were fed the propaganda. This was their life. Then Napoleon is the leader, and Napoleon is known as our leader, Comrade Napoleon. And then some farms betray Napoleon, and they hate the other farms. Now suddenly they're bad. Makes complete sense. And then there was another attack between the farms. The animals were at breakfast when the lookouts came racing in with the news that Frederick and his followers had already come through the 5-barred gate. And they blew up the windmill. And the animals were horrified. But Napoleon was like, we can build as many windmills as we want to build. And he completely put it aside. Did he care for what the animals thought? And then Boxer gets too old and gets too sick, and his lungs gave out. And it was said that animals could go in retirement. But there's a little secret clause with that. While Boxer was taken away, the animals noticed on the van. It was said that he was being brought to a slaughter house for horses. So retirement was basically a word for you're getting killed because you are no use to the animals anymore. And then the animals started forgetting. They were getting too old, and all the new animals, they were born into this propaganda. Just like in real life. This book is identical to real life. No matter that these are animals, this is real life. These are the real politics that were going on at the time. It doesn't matter that it's true animals. This is exactly the same as real life. As I stated in the start, George Orwell wrote this book in a way that he could state out the facts, but hide it. Of course, he did have difficulty publishing it, but he did manage to get it published after all. And then the pigs started walking on their hind legs. And then it was stated that 4 legs good, 2 legs better. Again, pigs were getting more and more like humans. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Just like what is stated on the back of the book, right above the blurb. And then we get into the end of the book, where the animals look into the pigs and the other humans having a meeting, and the pigs start morphing into humans, and at the end it's stated that no question now what had happened to the faces of the pigs. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which. The pigs were morphed into humans. They became the evil that they tried to free themselves from. And now all the 5 words from chapter 7 to 10 would be: The first one would be emboldened by the collapse of the windmill. And then we have infanticide, and that they were continually fighting among themselves and had resorted to cannibalism and infanticide. And then the third one would be pervading the air about them and menacing them with all kinds of dangers. Then fourth one would be stupefied. The animals were stupefied. And the fifth one is countenance. Napoleon appeared to change countenance and sharply ordered Boxer to let the dog go. One of the questions was, what will happen in the next chapter? Theories, themes. And, well, I couldn't really answer that question since I already read the book, so I didn't know what was going to happen. But we could see what would happen slowly from the propaganda. They would do something and it would go against the commandment, and boom, suddenly the commandment was changed later in the book, and you could guess that. You could guess that happening. And slowly, all the commandments changed. And as I stated before, the world of this book is no different from our world. It doesn't matter that they're animals. They could still tell the story of the real world at the time, World War II, and all the political nonsense that was going on at the time. Now we can get on to the interesting parts of this book. Correlations with the real world with facts. So, Napoleon was based off of Joseph Stalin, and as we know, he was a dictator. He was born in 1878, and he died in 1953. And he was the kind of leader that ruled with an iron fist, and we could see that with Napoleon. He led the people. He fed propaganda. He did everything his way. He conquered. He killed others. It was said that he killed around 20 million people during that time. And he didn't care. He just wanted power. And that was Napoleon. He wanted power. And then, afterwards, we could see Snowball. And Snowball was based off of Leon Trotsky. And he was a Russian Marxist revolutionist. Again, another key figure during our world history as just an animal in Animal Farm. And we could see that every animal has something from that time. And also, Old Major was Lenin. He was the revolutionary leader of the time. And Lenin was a Russian revolutionist, politician, and political theorist. He served as the first founding head of government of Soviet Russia from 1970 to 1924, and of the Soviet Union, from 1922 to 1924. He was born in 1870 and he died in 1924. So, after Lenin dies in our time, Stalin comes to power. Just like in Animal Farm, so there are correlations with everything. And here Mr. Jones represents Tsar Nicholas II. Known in the Russian Orthodox Church as Saint Nicholas the Passion Bearer, was the last Emperor of Russia, King of Congress Poland, and Grand Duke of Finland. So, Mr. Jones was the Empire of Russia. So, he was drawn out and then he was completely changed to a dictatorship with Old Major starting as Lenin. Mr. Friedrich was based off of Hitler. So, as we could see later on in the book, they started getting friendly. So, we could see a sort of correlation with Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, where Russia and Germany became friends. On the outside, they were friends, but on the inside, you can see that they did that just so they could trade lands, and so they would have better lands, and that was also what signed the fate of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and other post-Soviet countries nowadays. That Russia wanted them, and so Russia gave some to Germany, and then Germany came some to Russia, and so they worked together. And yeah, of course, that fell apart later on. Nothing lasts in real life. And then Mr. Pillington was England and United States, and it represented capitalist government. And Mr. Whymper, after you learn all about these roles that George Orwell wrote about, it all makes sense. It's all correlated with real life. It all aligns. It all aligns. Thank you for listening to this rambling of Animal Farm, and goodbye.